Hey fam, I'm Call Me Not Call Me, and welcome back to my channel for more Wheel of Time. Today I'm going to be basically bringing back an old segment where I used to ride around in my Joe car up and down the North Road, to and fro as one does. And I used to just talk about the Wheel of Time, thoughts that I would have, and you know, things that would come to mind as I, listen to the audiobooks. And shout out to Kate Redding and Michael Kramer. You killed it on Malcare Talks. I loved it. I just wanted to say, hey, Michael, can you just say The Gathering Storm? Everything. Anyway, so basically I'm bringing that back. I'm going to just just talk to you guys, and as I get thoughts, and or I'm going to also just go over parts of the books that I absolutely love and hold dear. And that's exactly what I'm actually going to do today. I'm going to be starting off with the beginning, The Eye of the World. It's New Hope. It's the New Hope. I mean, it's the roots of it. It's not as, maybe as far as ranking maybe the best of all of the books, but at the same time, it's the root, it's the start. And it always, every time I go on a reread and I think about The Eye of the World, or just the beginning, I just think of, oh my goodness, the story, the journey, the adventure, the turmoil, the danger, the life-changing events that these kids, relatively kids, are going to basically go on. And it basically just fills me with I wonder what I hear, what I hear this time through, and so it's a great part, and I just love the beginnings of that book, mostly from the prologue all the way through chapter 10. I'm gonna basically start off with just from prologue to chapter 5 today, but I feel like it's gonna be it's a ride that I always enjoy. I never skip those chapters basically. So today's video is gonna basically contain spoilers through chapter 5 of The Eye of the World. I assume that most people basically have read those books. If you are interested in the Wheel of Time, if you haven't, shame on you. I'm going to try to do my part to make sure that by the time this show comes out, at least 5 more people that I know are going to start reading the Wheel of Time. That's just, and it's not on some kind of cult, level. Not much. But at the same time, I just feel like it's a great story, and I want them to be able to share in it. I've learned a lot about myself and about the world, through those books. So, I'm going to basically just go through them, and, maybe I might jump around from one book and maybe jump back to a different book, and I'm just going to have fun with it. I'll let you guys know what I'm covering at the time, of course. Please, before we go on any further, please like, comment, and subscribe. Like the video if you do. Subscribe if you haven't. Thank you so much to all of my subscribers. Obviously, as I stay consistent, I'm trying. The channel is growing, and it will grow. So I appreciate for all of my my regular viewers, and hopefully I'm finding some new viewers, and if I do, welcome to my hold. I am Call Me Not Call Me. So on to The Eye of the World. It starts with the prologue, and the prologue is like, to some people it's a little confusing, because it starts off in a place where no other parts of the books really attach to it yet, and and it's just like, so it stands alone by itself in a whole nother world, and maybe you'll hear certain little things that you might have heard or read in the prologue later on, but it just basically, everyone, like my brother and sister who've read it, they basically are just like, what is that about? It's just like, it doesn't, I'm waiting for it to come back, and it doesn't. I'm just like, just keep reading. Just keep reading. Anyway, so the prologue basically starts out in the palace of Luz Therin Telamon. he is pretty much the, you know, the head man in charge of the president, pretty much the president of the Aes Sedai. And so he basically is walking around looking for his wife, and he doesn't see her, but at the same time, he doesn't seem as concerned about his surroundings, but his surroundings are just a puzzle of destruction all over, you know, and weird kinds of destruction where you have people in you know, in rock merged, if my memory serves me, but basically people bodies are all around, and he's just walking around looking for his wife, Eliana. And so out of nowhere, basically a man appears, and he seems familiar with Lews Therin Teleban. He seems as though they are in conflict, and or they basically oppose each other, and he realizes that Lews Therin is looking for his wife, and the bodies are all over the place, and so he basically heals him in time, you know, just for him to, you know, find out, you know, what he has done and realize who the person is in front of him. And so he in anguish of basically what he realizes that he has done, which is basically kill his entire family and every person that basically loved or cared for him, at least that was in that house at the time, including his wife and children. In that anguish, he basically runs away, and then somehow summons a lightning bolt out of the sky that hits him, and it's so powerful that it basically creates a volcano which spreads into a mountain and has affected the land so much that it even created an island in the middle of a large river that's nearby. So it lends something to the fact of this power. Like, what is this power that he and the other person was able to kind of use? At least that it shows that there is some type of magic system. So but that's basically, you know, and then the man shows up and says that basically, you know, this is not over, it's never over, this has happened for a long time, basically. So it shows signs of something to come. So that's the prologue. At the end of that, you're just like, what the hell did I start reading? But it's really, really cool, because it's just like the lightning bolt was so powerful and so bright that any person that saw it would have been blind for life if they would have glimpsed the lightning bolt. So the fact that it reached down so far through the crust of the earth that it was able to basically start a volcano, that's amazing to me. That basically just shows you, like, oh my goodness, that kind of power is out there in the world. What are we looking for? So anyway, so then it goes straight to chapter 1, An Empty Road. And so in chapter 1, Empty Road, you are basically on a empty road with Rand al'Thor and his father, Tam al'Thor. And they're on their way to the village, which is Emond's Field, for a festival called Beltane. Now, Beltane is basically like a spring festival, like the spring equinox, basically, you know. And so usually it's a festival, it's a festive time, you know. It's green and it's you know flowers and all kind of stuff like that, basically. Or at least, you know, it's starting to get warm, at least, you know, and people are starting to feel good about the year to come. But this year it's very, very cold, and more animals are coming down, you know, into closer people regions, which is basically disturbing to the you know, inhabitants of that village and section. which is called the Two Rivers. I'm not sure if they went over that just yet, but basically people are concerned. And so Rand and Tam, you know, trying to basically, you know, have fun with the festivities, their annual festivities, are on their way to the village. And they have their cart, and the cart is filled with apple cider and just different things, basically. I think apple brandy too, maybe. And so they're bringing those supplies to the village, and Rand basically turns around and just, you know, looking around and sees a man on the road, and he's dressed all in black, and it basically, he feels something from this person who's just, it seems as though it's watching him. And so he turned back to his dad to let his dad know that there's somebody on the road. And so his dad turns, and when the dad turns and looks, the guy's gone. But then he thought that was weird, but he was just like, okay, maybe he's just, you know, seeing things. And he felt like he knew he saw it, you know. And another thing that basically stood out to him was the fact that the wind, which is basically blowing his cloak all over the world, never touched the other guy's cloak. It just stood still while he sat on, while he basically stood there and watched him. So that basically freaked Rand out. But they continued on. They didn't see anything. He continued on. And so they get to the village, Emmons Field, where they meet the mayor. The mayor is Bran Alvear. He basically, you know, greets them very jovially, and he greets Tam, and Tam is one of the men on the village council. So, you know, Tam is someone of, you know, good standing, and people take his advice, and they are basically just talking about different things. And while they talk, Rand's friend Matcham Cawthon, I can't help but smile, basically comes and tells Rand, hey Rand, why don't you come over, let's go over here instead, while they're basically talking, because next thing you know, they're basically gonna have us doing some work. And so Rand is basically talking to him a little bit, and of course Tam notices and tells them basically off to go and take the supplies down into the cellar. So basically Matt, you know, decides, okay, fine, you know, let me go ahead and do that. And so while they're doing that and they're putting the stuff down in the cellar, they get some honey cakes from Marin Alvear. And so they start talking, and then they find out that Matt's all excited because there are strangers in the village. This is something that basically doesn't happen a lot. It's a very, isolated kind of area of the world, you know. So strangers are a, happening occurrence or an interesting occurrence. So basically, and immediately Rand thinks, was it a man in a black cloak? And so Matt was like, you saw him too? And so they start talking about it a little bit, and next thing you know, one of the village kids basically comes downstairs and is, trying to, hang out with the older kids basically. And then they decide, they find out that basically there's going to be fireworks, and they're all excited, and they come upstairs. And when they come upstairs, sorry guys, I hopped right into chapter 2. Chapter 2, strangers. I was just going. Sometimes that might happen. Please just let me be. I'm multitasking here. So basically, Rand and Matt, they're in the cellar. They're talking about strangers. They both realize that they've both seen the stranger in the black cloak. But Matt is also talking about another stranger or strangers that are in the village. It's a lady and a man that looks like he is her servant or is a guard or something like that, basically. And her name is the Lady Moraine, and his name is Lan. And so basically they're all excited. They go back upstairs. They see that there is a raven who is basically just perched on top of one of the buildings and looking down at them. And so Matt and Rand are just like, I'm sick of things just staring at me. So they basically pick up some stones and they throw it at the raven, and the raven basically just moves out the way like he was like, you know, he's not even bothered. And so they're like, what the? And out of nowhere, the raven basically out of nowhere takes flight as though it was hit. And so out of nowhere, a lady's voice says filthy things. And they turn around and there is the Lady Moiraine. And they talk with her a little bit. She says that she's just in the, you know, in the village looking for, you know, for old stories. And they're just like, what kind of old stories is up in this village? And so she basically, you know, is pleasant to them and decides to give them some coin. And says, you know, that she might talk to them later on. And so she decides to walk off, and out of nowhere they see a person move against the building across the way that they didn't notice before. And it's a man, they realize, and they were just like, you know, and he walks away. So Moiraine and Lan walk away. And Matt and Rand are sitting there and they're just talking about basically, you know, how exciting this Beltane is going to be with fireworks and strangers and a Gleaman. They also found out that a Gleaman was coming into town. And so a Gleaman basically is a traveling entertainer who sometimes plays music, I assume, and tells stories. And that's something that's a big occurrence also in small towns. So they can't wait for the Gleaman to come out. They can't wait for the fireworks, and they're just so excited. And then on top of it, they start to hear a bustle in the village, and they realize that the peddler is coming into town. Another thing that basically happens, or they were expecting to happen in for Beltane. So chapter 3, the Gleaman. Now, in chapter 3, basically, they hear all this bustle and they hear it coming and approaching. The villagers are basically starting to yell to the peddler. Basically, a peddler is a person, it's like a traveling salesman, basically, that has lots of different types of things with them, like pots and pins and ribbons. And also another thing that peddlers usually bring into the town is news. And that's the most important thing, because this village is very, very isolated. So they're asking, what's going on in other towns? Is it as hard here, there, as it is here? And so the peddler, Pot on Fane, he basically says, you think it's hard here? It's hard everywhere. You know, people are basically going hungry, and crops are failing, and wolves are coming down and attacking people. But that's not the only thing that's going on in the world. We also have war in the world. And this is something that's a concept that the villagers are not really as, familiar with. They've heard of war, of course, and they hear of it in stories, but nothing that ever has touched Emond's Field or the Two Rivers, not that they know of. So the peddler starts telling them that there is war in a country called Gleaman. And they're asking war, and he says that basically there is a man who can channel, who is basically, has collected an army, or has, gathered an army, and is, moving through Gleaman. And the Aes Sedai are actually going to go and meet him and fight him. Aes Sedai, they basically kind of introduced them as, I don't know, they didn't specifically tell what they can do, but, but they're these, not mythical creatures, but people people from the Two Rivers don't really meet often at all, if they've ever met Aes Sedai. But basically, these Aes Sedai are the only ones who can basically defeat a man who can channel, who he basically introduces a term called a false dragon. Now, a false dragon is a man who can channel, and these people have come up here and there in history throughout time, and basically they gather armies, you know, and sometimes they have people who follow them, and they, you know, they start trouble and, you know, and wars and destruction. And so it's something that's people are very, very concerned with and are scared of, and they basically, you know, they say that only the Aes Sedai can combat that person. So everybody's a little scared and wondering what's going on, and they want to know more information. And the village council is also out there basically to greet the peddler, and they decide that this information is very important and needs to be basically discussed by the village council. So they take the peddler into the inn, which is the Wine Spring Inn, which is where Bran Alvear, the mayor, lives and owns and operates the inn, the only inn in the village of Emmonsfield. And they go in there to basically discuss what's going on. And so, you know, while they're there, two other friends of Rand and Matt, three other friends actually, of Matt and Rand's basically appear. The first one is Perrin Aybara, which is another friend, which is another main character of the books. Rand and Matt are also main characters of the books, but they also meet two other characters, two female main characters, whose name is Egwene Alvear, who is a little bit younger than Matt, Perrin, and Rand, and Nynaeve Almera. She is the village wisdom. Now, the village wisdom is basically like the village doctor. You know, she, you know, helps the sick, and she helps to heal wounds and stuff like that, basically. And Egwene is her apprentice. Also, Rand notices that Egwene has braided her hair, and this is like a rite of passage for you know, for Two Rivers women, basically, that after they get to a certain age in the village, the women's circle, which is like the counterpart to the village circle, which are basically men, the women's circle, the village council is the men's counterpart to the women's circle. Each village will have both, basically. And so when the women's circle decides that a woman has become old enough to marry, she can now braid her hair. That basically is a sign of her being old enough and mature enough to take care of herself and, you know, guide herself in her life. So they meet those people, and you know, the wisdom, Nynaeve, she finds out that the peddler has come and has, you know, some bad news, and the village council has taken him into the inn to discuss. And so she realizes that the village council, or she decides that the village council is probably not asking them the right answers at all. You know, she thinks, you know, she has a feeling that some women, you know, basically share in those areas, or that basically, you know, men, you know, if you leave them to the devices, they'll get everything wrong. So women have to basically take care of everything. So she decides to go into the inn and to go and investigate herself. And when she goes in, someone comes out, and it's the Gleaman. Chapter 4, the Gleaman. So an old man steps out of the inn. Basically, he has white mustaches that basically hang over his mouth, and he is wearing a cloak, a weird looking cloak that basically has a whole bunch of colored patches on it. Apparently that is basically like a Gleaman's signature piece of attire. And so they notice him. He comes out, and he's just like a young girl basically just told me to leave, or she'd hit me with her stick. And so I'm paraphrasing. And so he comes out, and he introduces himself to, you know, the small waiting crowd of basically, you know, Rand, Perrin, Matt, and Egwene, and a couple of villagers who still are standing around, who hasn't left because, you know, dejected because basically they couldn't speak to the peddler. And so he starts telling them, you know, about what he came to do, and the stories that he plans to tell. And he tells stories about, you know, different stories, I guess, that would be, familiar basically to a lot of different people. You know, these stories are like, you know, like Mark Twain and like, you know, the like, you know, our To Kill a Mockingbird's type of stories, but like, you know, the spoken word, you know, stories, those kind of things that kind of I love, because I love the fact that it kind of connects to you know, the storytelling that pretty much our society and civilization have passed on from generation to generation, that basically, you know, has become our quote unquote history, you know, because, you know, it's connected to things that possibly could be true. So those are things, that kind of stories that he tells, and some of the stories that he even mentions have some similar references to, you know, things that have happened in our own world, you know, like when Merc and when Mosk and Merc basically, you know, fire, you know, fire arrows basically at each other, pretty much kind of is referencing America and Russia's Cold War, you know, or the escalation of a Cold War, you know, or, you know, and different things like, you know, eagle, you know, that basically, you know, goes out into space, basically, just different little things like that. And it's so interesting to try to, like, you know, place those stories in our own world. And I love the fact that, you know, Robert Jordan even does something like that, because it kind of lends itself to an idea of the Wheel of Time, where it's just like the Wheel of Time is something that's, you know, it goes and comes around again, you know, time repeats itself and history kind of repeats itself in a way. But it's been a long history that we have had. So it's great to see that our long history kind of survives through these spoken stories that basically gets passed down from generation to generation. And a Gleaman is a person that basically does this, you know, does this service. It's funny because I'm thinking to myself, like, how do they get paid, you know? But it's funny because in the clip that Wadon Prime released, basically it says a donation for the Gleaman. So I'm guessing that they basically work off donations, but I'm sure the village has also compensated him for coming to their festival. So so while he's there, you know, talking, he basically, you know, he goes off basically after the village council has basically broken up. They come out of the inn, and Tom decides to go back in. Oh, I'm so sorry. He basically was juggling and doing like backspins and stuff like that, and everybody was like, ooh, I can't wait to see it. So kids are excited, adults are excited, everybody's basically waiting for tonight. It's amazing. It's going to be amazing. And when the village council come out, Rand's father tells him, we're going home. And he's just like, we're going home, why? And so he's a no nonsense kind of father. If he says we're going home, pack your ish, period. So so basically Rand goes and starts collecting whatever he can, and says his goodbyes to, you know, to Rand and, you know, to Matt and Perrin, and basically collects their horse Bella, and basically gets back on the road and goes back home with his dad. So that's the end of chapter 4. Chapter 5, Winter Night. So they travel back with no issue, with no problems, back to their farmhouse. It's a small house. Basically, it's just him and his father. He had a mother, Cariel Thor, but Cariel Thor died when he was about 5 years old, and so he only has memories of her. But right now, it's just Rand and Tam who live there. So they decide, hey, we're here. There's still some daylight. Let's basically finish up some chores that we have around the farm, and get ready for our night, and just have some dinner. So they, you know, he you know, takes care of Bella, and you know, checks on the sheep, and Tam checks the well water just to make sure. Also, on their way, I forgot to mention, on their way back home, Tam tells Rand that he's not the only one who has seen the Black Rider. He actually tells him that not only has Matt seen the Black Rider, and Perrin saw the Black Rider, but also a couple of other kids basically mentioned that they saw the Black Rider. So basically, it's something that they're concerned about, or he's concerned about. So, you know, they're just, you know, being cautious, going back just to make sure that nobody messes around with their farm while they're away. And while they're gone, so when they get back, they basically, you know, settle everything up, make sure everything's okay on the farm. And so, and while they're there, so basically they decide to start some food, you know, and some hot tea. So, you know, Rand is basically, you know, setting everything up for some tea, and they light some candles because it's dark now, and, you know, they're basically just getting ready for some, you know, for some dinner. And Rand's father leaves and goes back to, you know, his room, wherever that is. And next thing you know, Rand hears a scraping on the floor. When his father comes back, he basically has a sword on. And he's just like, a sword? Like, I've never seen you with a sword before. Where did you get a sword? And he was just like, I got it a long time ago. Don't worry about it. And so he's like, okay. So he's just like, you know, just in case. That's what basically Tam says, you know, just in case. You never know. So, you know, Rand is there, and he's just, you know, trying to see what's going on. And, you know, he sits down, dinner's almost ready. And so he is about to sit down and have dinner with his dad. And next thing you know, they basically hear something hit the front door of their home. And before they can really react to be like, what the fuck? Next thing you know, the door busts open, the lock busts open, and basically flies across the room. The door busts open, and there is a dark figure in the door. And so at first, Rand is like, oh, okay, thank God it's not the guy in the black cloak. But then when he looks again, he realizes that this is another type of thing that he's never seen before. It's way bigger, and it fills the entire doorway. And, you know, Tam immediately gets into action, is just like pulls out his sword and tells Rand to run. And so Tam's doing whatever he can to try to fight off the creatures that basically is invading their home, and tells Rand to run. And Rand, even though he feels ashamed about it, he leaves, he runs off, and basically tries to hide in the you know, in the woods around his farmhouse. And so he's basically, you know, hiding for a while, and then he finally gets out. He hears his dad, you know, call out, and he tells his dad, oh, I'm over here. And his dad basically runs in a different direction to lead those creatures somewhere else while he waits. And then finally, he and his father finally meet up in the woods, and he realizes that Tam has been wounded. So he's just trying to keep his father comfortable, and sits him down, and realizes that he's going to have to go back to see if he could find anything to help. So that's pretty much. And so he goes back. He realizes that he goes back, and Bella is gone. The sheep is the wool of the sheep is wet, and so he realizes that, okay, these sheep are dead. And he just does what he can to pretty much just you know, search around to try to help and find something for his dad. He has his dad's sword. He takes his dad's sword for protection, realizing that his dad has been wounded and is in no shape to help at all. So he goes back to the farmhouse, and he, you know, is trying to see what he could collect. And then he sees, and then one of the Trollocs, who is laying dead on the floor, actually gets up and talks to him, and tells him that the Murdral wants to talk to him, and says basically that if he waits here, the Murdral's going to come back. He just wants to speak to him, to relax. And so he tries to calm Rand down, and when Rand seems like he's starting to relax, he charges at Rand, and Rand just basically gets the sword up just in time to run the Trolloc through to the chest. And so he's lucky in that he gets the sword back, cleans it off, finds some planks and cloth, and basically makes a pullable something to basically pull his father to safety with, and packs up what he can and leaves to go find his father back out in the woods. So that basically is the first 5 chapters and the prologue of A Wheel of Time's Eye of the World, book 1. From time to time, I'm going to basically just go over stuff like this, chapters, maybe 1 chapter, maybe 5 chapters, or maybe just basically go through just thoughts as I have as I drive along up and down the North Road, as I said. This segment is Light Take the Wheel. I hope you liked it. So please like, comment, and subscribe, like I said before. If you'd like to find me, you can find me at Call Me Not Call Me on Discord and on Instagram. Call Me Not Call Me 1 on Twitter, and you can send me an email at callmenotcallme@gmail.com if you want to get in contact with me. Please leave comments. I love to hear what you guys think, and I love basically, you know, interacting with you guys. But thanks for joining me during this quick little hit that I got here. I hope you come back for the next one. But till then, may you always find water and shade.